stuff has to go somewhere. So it went, for his body
Mm-hmm.
sent that extra waste out the ear canal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a sacrifice that the body makes. And the sacrifice is, if the body, from the body's perspective, you let that stuff stay in place, and you're going to have a malfunctioning liver or a
Mm-hmm.
malfunctioning heart. Well, that's going to shorten the life. But if you send it out through the ear canal, the dog will just be deaf. At
Mm-hmm.
least there'll be life. So it's a cost benefit thing that the body does. What we have to do is find out why that stuff is coming out the ears and coming out the skin and the eyes and all of that and between the pads, and stop all of this waste production in the
Mm-hmm.
body.
Were any of your dogs fasting themselves or anything at the time when this was happening?
No, nobody, I mean, all my dogs have been, wanting to eat all of the time. The only experience I had with fasting was I had a cat that was injured, and this was Herbie. I have a little essay on my website about Herbie, because he had a pretty long life, but he had a bit of an adventure at the end of it with a neighbor that fed him commercial cat food. But anyway, he was injured. I suspect that he crawled up into a car and got too near the fan when
Mm-hmm.
the person started it, and it just lacerated the inside of his leg, and it was a very deep cut. And I didn't take him to the vet because he absolutely hated leaving home. I didn't want to subject him to that, and he was already very traumatized. And by that time, I was realizing that the best way for animals to heal is for us to just keep our hands off and let their bodies do the work when we can do that. I mean, when a
Mm-hmm.
bone needs to be set, that's different. When blood loss needs to be stopped, that's different. There's a time for that. There's an occasion when you have to do that. But in this case, he just fasted himself for 10 days. He hid under my house for 10 days. I offered him food every day. I don't remember if he came out, it was a long time ago. I don't remember if he came out on his own or if I enticed him out with food, but he would not eat
Mm-hmm.
until the 10th day, and he ate. And that was the first day that he put weight on his leg. So at that point, I knew that I had done the right thing and it was going to heal on its own. And he was fine from that point
Mm-hmm.
on.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the only experience I had with fasting until I started to learn more about it. And the Coco, my little Cocker Spaniel cockapoo who's had gone deaf, I
Mm-hmm.
decided to fast him um, and really get his ears cleaned out. And I fasted him for 11 days the first time, and he rejuvenated. He turned into a puppy again.
Mm-hmm.
I've told this story a few times where my mom didn't see him for a whole year. And when she saw him after a year, he had fasted in the meantime. And she thought I had gotten a new puppy because she didn't
Yeah.
recognize him.
Mm-hmm.
He was, so he never had another ear infection his whole life, no more ear inflammation. Unfortunately, those nerves in his ear were damaged because of the waste coming out, and his hearing did not come back. But he didn't have any more inflammation, and he had actually no more vet visits for the remaining 11 years of his life, which is, pretty remarkable on its own.
Yeah. It mentioned feeding some ground beef or ground turkey, I think it was.
Mhm.
And that wasn't exactly, you did discover that wasn't exactly the best thing to do, but it was an improvement. What is the best way to feed the dogs?
Well, that's kind of an open question because there's lots of variation between individual dogs, and there might be lots of variation between breeds of dogs. Um, but I do have a system that's sort of, in fact, it's very customizable for dog owners, depending mostly on what they want to feed, because we don't really know what dogs need. Um, People like to pretend that they know what dogs need. They like to pretend they know how much dogs need, and nobody really knows that. All we know is what we see dogs doing in nature. And,
Mm-hmm.
there's no wild humans we can watch, but there's wild dogs we can watch. And there are people that watch them and they take lots of notes and make observations. And we can glean information from that that's really important and that we shouldn't ignore. But what we can do is compare what a wild dog eats to what a normal domestic dog eats, and then we can see the deficiencies and the excesses in the diet of the domestic dog. So what we have to do at that point is to set about correcting those deficiencies and excesses. And in fact, it's mostly excesses. I don't like to say that D word because that gets people starting to think about supplements and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that deficiency word. So it's mostly excess because, you know, when you realize all of these problems with the way domestic dogs are fed are really a function of how the pet food industry functions and what they use and what they put in their products and how they lie to us about it. So the perfect way to feed a dog is an open question, but we have a range. We have some general principles that can guide us. Like we know that they eat the bodies of